At this time, I will call on the Mayor of the City of Guelph, His Worship Cam Guthrie.
Well, thank you very much. Honored veterans, members of Canada's Armed Forces and Reserves, cadets and scouts, emergency responders, ladies, gentlemen, and children. On behalf of the City of Guelph, I am honored to bring greetings on this day of remembrance. Today we gather together to remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice in service to Canada. And we gather in gratitude and respect for all who have served our country and for those who are serving today in the Canadian Forces and in the Reserves. As Remembrance Day approached this year, I found myself thinking about what I would like to share with you in the city. And so this year I thought I would make it a bit more personal, and I'd like to talk to you a bit more about my grandfather, Gordon Guthrie, who served as a medic in World War II. So often we hear of special dates during wars where something significant happened. D-Day is one of those dates, June 6, 1944. My grandfather arrived just after D-Day, and the enemy had only been pushed back about 1 kilometer. I can only imagine the absolute chaos and bloodshed he must have seen when he landed there. While growing up, we all knew my grandfather had served in the war, but he didn't talk about it much. And we all knew that we really weren't supposed to bring it up that much if we didn't have to. There was one time, though, I believe I was around 11 years old, when I did talk to my grandfather for just a few moments about his experiences. You see, my grandparents lived out in the country, and they had this big bungalow, and there was kind of the family room and kitchen at one end, and at the very, very far end of the house was where all the bedrooms were. My grandparents' bedroom had this really large walk-in closet where, and I hate to admit this, but they usually hid a lot of Christmas presents throughout the year in that closet. And on that particular day, I had snuck quietly all the way down the long hallway into their bedroom and into the closet to peek around to see what I could find. What I came across was not a train set or some Transformers or some Lego. I had instead come across a pair of very old, very heavy, and very battered binoculars. At that moment, my grandfather walked in and caught me rummaging through the closet, yet holding these binoculars. And my grandfather said, "Oh, and what did we find here, Cam?" I just kind of stared in silence because I thought for sure I was in a lot of trouble. But he told me to bring them into the kitchen and that he explained where they came from. So as we sat at the table together, he held them in his hands and he told me that these binoculars were from the war and that they actually came from a high-ranking German officer. I asked him, "Grandpa, how did you get them?" And my grandfather explained that he had been told from his commanding officers that he was allowed to take one item from a German prisoner, and he chose to keep these binoculars. To my 11-year-old eyes, I was in awe. These real binoculars from a German soldier from World War II. And we sat together a little longer at that table, looking through the binoculars outside his kitchen windows at the trees and the birds and the stream that was running through his backyard. And then my grandfather scooped them up, patted me on the head, and said, "I'm going to go put these back in the closet now." In the years since, I have often thought about those binoculars. And when knowing I was going to talk with you today, I thought about the people who held those in their hands during the war. They didn't bring those binoculars up to their eyes to look at birds or to look at the running streams or to take in the fullness of the green leaves on those trees. No. From the German position, those binoculars would have scanned the horizon for signs of advancing Allied troops. The lenses of those binoculars must have caught sight of Canadian soldiers. They must have seen fear and struggle and horror. They must have seen bravery and sacrifice, death, destruction, and tears. We can only imagine the sights the lenses of those binoculars saw. Could those lenses have seen a young man from Guelph, far away from home, on the fields, fighting for freedom? Could they have seen your great-grandfather, your father, your brother, your comrade in arms? Did they see my grandfather running across the front lines trying to save someone's life? Those binoculars have come to represent for me everything my grandfather saw and experienced, but perhaps couldn't talk about. They have come to represent the duty and responsibility we all have to always remember the sacrifices made by those who served. So after the war, my grandfather returned to Guelph, returned to raising a family, started running Guthrie's Bakery downtown, but the war certainly changed him. He would never be the same. And today, as we pause to remember, I am thinking of my grandfather and all the veterans like him who served our country with honor and bravery. Our veterans whose wartime memories may never go away, even though they may be tucked away in a closet like an old pair of binoculars. And I'm thinking of all those who did not return, all the names of Guelph soldiers that are on the cenotaph that represent the dreams that were never realized, lives that were cut far too short, and families that were left to grieve. Because of their sacrifices, we have the privilege of living in freedom and peace. We have the privilege of going about our lives and pursuing our dreams in one of the safest and most prosperous countries in the world. Today, I join you in not only remembering those we lost, but in expressing our deepest gratitude for the freedom they secured for us. And on this solemn day of remembrance, we do pay tribute to them. We honor them, and we pledge to always remember them. I want to challenge you all today. I want to challenge me to view our veterans and our troops through a new lens, the lens of gratitude, the lens of thankfulness, the lens of respect, and the lens of our deep love for each of them, for the freedoms that we have in this country and in this city to be able to peacefully enjoy, without fear, the birds that fly above us, the beautiful trees that surround us, and the streams at our feet. Thank you very much.